Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz Podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Loehding, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you. All right, so here we are, another fabulous guest, another day on Starter Girlz Podcast. Super excited about today. I want to open up with this. Sometimes the wake-up call comes when everything looks fine on the outside, but inside something feels off. My guest today is someone who knows what it's like to trade burnout for balance and achievement for alignment. Her story is about redefining success, trusting your intuition, and leading from a place of purpose. And so we're going to get to chat with her in just a few minutes. But before we do that, I do need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine.
All right. And with that, I do want to say head on over to startergirlz.com. You hear me say this every single week. And why do I say that? For three reasons. One, because if you have missed an episode, it's a great place to catch up. Even the bad ones, they're all there. It's also a great place for you to keep up in the know. You can sign up for our community newsletter and keep up with what we've got going on and follow all of our future podcast episodes. And then, of course, if you are an entrepreneur or creator, maybe you're already in the thick of your business and you want to understand or find out what your number one success block is that may be hindering your success, well, I've got your back. I have a 2-minute quiz over there that I've designed that will help you identify one of six subconscious blocks that may be impacting your success right now. So head on over to startergirlz.com. And as I always say, do your thing. Okay. And if I can keep talking in good words here, we're going to be good today because for whatever reason, I keep stumbling over my words. All right. So my guest today, Dr. Nicole Garritano, a fractional leadership advisor, leadership coach, and consultant with over 15 years of experience in healthcare, academia, and executive leadership. With a doctor of nursing practice and background as a nurse practitioner and university program director, Nicole blends evidence-based expertise with spiritual insight to help women align their energy, trust their intuition, and redefine success. Her own journey, which I'm sure she'll share with us, began with a health crisis that inspired her to choose alignment over achievement. And now she shares that through her work, her coaching, human design, energy medicine, and breath work. And so, Dr. Nicole Garritano, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Every time I hear an intro of myself, it's like, is that really me? I don't know if other people feel that way, but sometimes when you have your own life reflected back to you, kind of gets you even a little emotional when you just think about all the hurdles that you've overcome. So,
right. Am I right?
Shout out to everybody listening that's maybe in that process of going through some hurdles right now. There is light on the other side and lots of possibility.
Absolutely. And I want to add to those bios, all my years, people have heard me say this on these episodes so many times, 22 years in Mary Kay in leadership, and we had to get really good at accolades. And it's interesting because I think the reason we did that was just because it was sort of like you just said, you would hear those and you're like, wow, I did that. It kind of feels good, right? To know. But when you have that story that goes with that, there's power behind it too. And it makes you realize like all the work you had to do to get to where you are. Right.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm excited to chat with you because I think you and I are going to have a powerful story. And I myself have had to overcome multiple health things that I've had to work on. Hence why we do this show because it's been a journey for sure. And so I always say all my people that come on here, I love having conversation with them. And so I just think we're going to have a great dialogue here today.
Me too. Can't wait.
Okay, so let's talk about you because you, like me, have a lot of things back there behind you. Things
Yes.
I imagine that a lot of this has been stuff you've learned in the process of healing yourself and things you wanted to know. And so I want you to tell us a little bit. I want to start with where you are now. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you're helping your clients and what kind of makes you unique and what you're doing.
Yeah. So the way I help clients now, I mainly help organizations and then particularly founders or the solopreneur. I'm truly still a solopreneur. And so I have a really big heart for everybody out there that is going the entrepreneurial route on their own, but also just feels like they are on such a mission and have a passion for what they're doing. So the main ways I help is I help solopreneurs align their energy with their business, because so many times we're taught business needs to look a certain way. And so I actually help them align the processes behind the scenes as well as the forward facing, how they're presenting themselves to the world in a way that's really true and authentic to them. And inside organizations, I work with leaders and also with teams around team dynamics, employee health and wellness, and leadership development.
I love it. It's a lot of the stuff I feel like you and I have so many parallels.
Yes, we do.
I feel like it's like, it's so funny. Like you're going to laugh at this. And because it's not only like the work I do here, but like I have a pet sitting business too that I do, because I'm like all around. I'm like, hey, we're taking care of humans and taking care of the pets, right? And the world's a happy place when you cover the two. But it's so funny because I was telling my husband yesterday, because I have so many websites, I feel like, because I've got my health website, my coaching, my pet, my podcast. I finally was like, that's it. We're just going to create one digital card and we're just going to put everything together because it all goes together. And that way, when people say to me, Nicole, they're like, what is it you do? I'm like, I'm just going to give you my digital card. It's so much easier.
It would take too long to go through all of those things. But hey, I'm a big pet lover. We have 5 pets, so I'm right there with you. You got to take care of the animals.
You do. And when you're a healthy person and your pets are healthy, the world is just a great place.
It is. It's such a better place.
I say we're taking care of the furry friends and their pet, their pet parents too. So
exactly.
But I love it because you're bringing a lot of these things that I love to talk about. Like, like I'm trained I'm a nervous system trainer. So I love talking about that. I think it's huge. And when you bring all this in and you talk about like the health and wellness, it really makes, and pair that with the leadership, it makes effective teams, effective people, right? Because it's not just about knowing leadership. To be an effective leader, you got to be well. And if you're not well, if you're not affecting yourself, you ain't affecting anybody else either.
Exactly. I always start with, we're all leaders. Some people will say they're not a leader, but I venture to say, no, we're all leaders. And it really starts with self-leadership. But so many people will sometimes not identify with their leadership qualities because of conditioning or experiences they had when they were younger with people in authority, or what they were told. Right, by other people about their leadership capability. And so many times the root of my work really starts with what I like to call the hero's journey of the leader. Let's go back, right? When did this story of leadership begin for you? Because it's in those roots of that story, right? We get to follow those roots to see how you're really flourishing and growing now. And if you're not growing, where did those roots get stunted along the way? And how can we fertilize, right, those roots and help you really step into the leader that you're meant to be, but by leading yourself first. So many times, like you said, we have to heal ourselves first. We have to lead ourselves by healing ourselves, so that ripple effect can then make its way out into the circles that we're a part of.
Yeah. And what's so interesting? I had, right before, that's why it took me a minute to get to you. I had a guy on here before. He was a former petroleum, he was engineering chemist. Smart guy. And at 49, he retired. And then he was like, okay, what do I do? I need to like reinvent myself, because like, what do I do? Like, I've achieved this pinnacle of success. And like, anyways, it's interesting because I was listening to him go through his framework, and it really kind of brings back when we talk about this whole like healing ourselves, transformation, whatever that looks like for everybody. Those of us that do sort of kind of go all through this same stages, right? These same stages, they look different for everybody, but and the people that come on and talk about them, they will say them to me in very different ways. But when I look at the overarching, they're always really the same. So it's like, I know the story because I've been through it, and everybody around me that has talked about this has been through it, but they look different. And it's so interesting to me to hear that from everybody, because they'll say little nuanced things. I'm like, that's what that was, that stage that we went through, but that's how they saw that stage, right? And this is how I saw it, you saw it, whatever. And so I guess what I'm saying is that the principles are really the same when you go through these transformations, right? They
Yes.
just look a little bit different to each of us that are going through the
Right.
process.
Right. And what's unique is our experience of that transformation, our very human experience, right? Because like you said, it is a process and there
Right.
are steps involved, and you're able to pick out when you hear people's stories like, oh, you were on like that rung of the ladder.
Right.
You were on
Right.
that step in the
Yes.
staircase.
Yes.
However, when we're having that human experience, we're not always viewing it as the next
Exactly.
rung, right? Or the next step,
Right.
because we're in the thick of it, right? You just can't help but be in it. And so I think it's really beautiful that even sometimes we're in the messiness of transformation and healing, we're all having this very unique lived experience that then gets to be the gift that we share with others in the way that it's meant to come through us. Because again, that's another element of that leadership, right? Being able to share in your own words about your lived experience. And that creates trust and authenticity and all these things we really strive for as leaders in these spaces and places that we show up.
Yeah. Well, I want to back up to your journey because obviously you've got the medical background, which I think is a great, awesome. I love it because I think that's, like I said, such a huge part of this whole leadership process. And it's the reason like why I got certified in nervous system training. And I ended up actually, I'm certified in keto and carnivore coaching and
Right.
also supplement training, not because I don't know if I had intentions really to do any of that with, but I did it for me because it was protocols that I needed for my healing journey. And in the process of that, I realized that I wanted to know what I could know about that, because if somebody is in that place, I might be able to say, here's what I did and here's what I can show you, kind of thing. So I want to know about your journey because clearly you've got the medical background and you brought that forward to you, and you had something in here that pulled you through this transformation. So maybe walk us through some of that.
Yes. Well, I'll just start by saying, because this may help someone that's listening, never be afraid to reinvent yourself. That is one thing when I reflect back on now, even though I had friends and family that every time I did a pivot, every time I went in a new direction, they were like, what's going on? Why can't you figure this out? Like, why do you need to do something new? And, people don't mean to, they can create some shame, right? Or they can make you
You
second
and I
guess
could be
yourself.
friends. I've been through this a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now when I step back at this age and look at it, I'm like, no, I was meant to go through every one of those reinventions. And it takes a level of courage, right? You have to be really courageous and brave and take risks. And not everybody's willing to do that. But if you're someone that's resonating with some of those words right now, just know, stay the course. There's nothing wrong with reinvention. And the people saying that to us, they do love us. They do.
Yeah.
They want to be helpful. They just probably aren't the risk takers, right? So they get to live vicariously through us. But yes, to circle back. So, really when I went to college initially, and both my parents were teachers. So, education was very front and center in our household growing up. So I know that has only contributed to me doing all the things that I've done, but I really studied business and marketing and PR. And I did that for several years, but it just it never did it for me. And I don't know if it was because having teachers that were parents or parents that were teachers, I always heard about the difference they were making. And there was something about being in the business world that I was like, I just don't feel like I'm making a difference. It wasn't as human focused. And then I went through this period. I went through a diagnosis of melanoma skin cancer in my mid-20s. And it was during that where I had a nurse at the head of my bed for my surgery, because my particular doctor didn't put you under if you were young. So she transformed everything for me. She talked me through the whole thing. And I just kind of had this feeling right then, like, I'm going to figure out how to become a nurse. And I did. That's a whole nother story, but I did figure out a way to become a nurse. So I pivoted into nursing. And I just remember in the first so many years in nursing, just going to work every day and feeling like I would forget I was getting paid to be there. Like, I just loved it so much. I enjoyed everything that I was doing. And that continued, that human connection, being of service. And what really made me unique in being a nurse as I was going into my 30s is that I did have that business background. which not every brand new nurse had. And so I understood it was also a business. And so it very quickly allowed me to be in some different leadership positions and sit on committees and do those things. And so fast forward through nursing, I became a nurse practitioner, did all those traditional steps, that a nice, good type A personality does to make their way through the profession. Right. And then I was working on my doctoral degree, and they invited me over into a position at the college. And so I wasn't intending to do that. I mean, I thought I would teach at some point, but I wasn't intending to do it then, but I did it. Leap of faith again. And then from there, I stepped into more leadership positions and got into administration within the university. But still, I always said I traded, you have your patients and you trade your patients for your students, because every student that's going through a program, they have a lot of mental health, things going on. They're juggling a lot. They have their own relationships, their own work, plus they're trying to take on these huge endeavors. And so you kind of just trade one group for another group. And then as I stepped into coaching, I was like, oh, my clients now are kind of like patients to students to clients. Right. But I really had that breaking burnout point when I was in academia. And it was interesting because academia felt like so much freedom. Yeah. For me, when I went into it, because there was not the set schedule, there was some flexibility and, getting to go to conferences and more travel and just things that feel really life-giving. But at the same time, I had not learned my own energy around saying yes and no to things. And being that overachiever, I said yes to everything. And so, when I experienced my burnout, my daughter was 1 year old. We had adopted her the year before. I never took a maternity leave from the university. I was running a couple programs at the time because we had some people leave. We were launching some new programs. And all of a sudden, a year later, I said yes to that. I said yes to things because I still had a clinical practice. And all of a sudden, I woke up one Friday morning with pain down the right side of my neck, shooting down through my arm with no known injury. And it ended up being a herniated disc in my neck. But because this happened on a Friday and there was no known injury, no one would do an MRI on me until Monday. So it was like God, the universe, just stepped in and said, all right, you get to lay in bed for the next 2 to 3 days, in pain. You're not going to be able to do much for yourself. You're going to have to actually ask other people for help. And It was, I think that was more painful than the pain I was in, laying in my bed, but hearing my husband and my mom and my sister came over and they're all trying to take care of our daughter. And I'm like hearing the vacuum and I'm hearing things like, they're not doing it right. They're not doing it the way I would do it. Yes. And so literally like a come to Jesus meeting around, okay, control, can you receive? And then halfway through it, laying in bed that weekend, because I'm the good type A, as you are too. Mm-hmm. I said, you know what? There's got to be other women out there that are just like me, that are burning it at both ends. They have no one to help them. And so I was like, I'm going to figure out how to become a coach, like how to help other women in this situation. And that weekend too, the only thing I could do was hold my phone and try to use my right hand, to look at my phone. And I read an email. This email popped up about entrepreneurship training. And you could fill out this application. So I filled it out with my left hand that weekend and I sent it off. Well, fast forward like 3 or 4 months, I'm finally done with physical therapy. I'm finally saying no to a few things. I'm starting to get better about it. And I get this phone call one day out of the blue and they're like, hey, you signed up for that entrepreneurship training. We didn't pick your application at first, but now somebody has dropped out. Would you like to step in? It starts next week. And I felt like that was my sign because it brought me back again full circle to, yes, that's right. I said when I felt better, this is what I was going to do. And so then things just started to align. And that was how I kind of stepped into coaching, dipped my toes in the water, so to speak.
So, and to go back to what you said in the very beginning about you needed all those stages, you definitely needed all those stages. Because I say this about everybody, really. I feel like most, even when they're even not even the same, like in the same playing field, there is something that came from each of those experiences that rolled into the next, right? And I think a lot of people don't, I don't want to say everybody, because again, that's assuming, but I think a lot of people miss that. They'll go, oh, I did this and that had nothing to do with what I'm doing. Well, it kind of did. You learned something while you were there. I mean, there was, like I talk about, there was this little short period of time where I partnered up with I worked with this firm for like a very short time. It was a leadership firm. They were working with these larger businesses. I think they were doing like 500,000 and up. And I was going to come in and do leadership. Basically, I was going to work with they were basically working with the teams, and I was going to come in and do some leadership training with some of the members on the teams. Anyways, never ended up happening because the goalposts kept changing. But long story short, we parted ways. I stayed there with them for maybe 4 or 5 months, and then we realized it wasn't going to work out, and we parted ways. And I was kind of bitter when I came out because I had felt like, I think the thing I was bitter about at the time, Nicole, was that I felt like my time had been wasted, right? Like I felt like I'd spent my time committed, and they kept changing the goalposts. It was always, I needed to learn something else. I was qualified. I had 20 something years of leadership. I don't know everything. I'm not going to pretend that I know everything, but I could probably have led a few people to do something,
Yes.
I built teams. Okay. But they just kept changing the goalposts. And when I came out, I was angry, and my husband said something to me I hadn't forgotten about, which is interesting because he's an engineer. He's not even in any of this kind of work. He said, think about all the books you read while you were working in that firm, because I did. I read Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read Spin Selling. I read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I read all of these great books that, interestingly enough, now I recommend that my clients read. And I would have probably never taken the time to sit down to do that had I not had those stupid goalposts keep changing. And he kept telling me I needed to read another book. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so my point to this is, here I was in a moment being bitter about the fact that I'd gone through this and wasted my time, never made a dime, doing this, but I actually gained some really good knowledge and more than just the books. It taught me, what I want to work with, what I don't, what type of client I want. It helped me in so many ways. And shortly after that, I partnered up with a mentor that I worked with for 2 years. That was, talk about perfect timing, came in right after that and helped me with a lot of different things. And so, to your point, I think that all these experiences that we have are really instrumental in the foundation. We just have to figure out what they are, even if sometimes your chemical engineer husband has to point it out to you.
Yes. Well, it's because we're so close to it, right? When it's happening. And deep down, as humans, we just want to feel seen and valued with what we bring to the table. So especially with what you're describing, you're like, I'm here. Hello. Let me do this work. Oh, now you keep shifting things around on me. So now I'm over here reading this book, right? You're gaining a lot of knowledge. But again, I come back to, it's because we want to control. We have an idea of how things are supposed to unfold.
Oh,
And so we just keep learning that lesson. Even in my story, there's so many instances of, okay, you have melanoma skin cancer. You can't control that. You can't control the outcome. You have to lean into surrender, right? Making those pivots in my career. There was no guarantee each one would work out or be successful, but you have to lean in and surrender, right? Becoming a mom through adoption. There's a lot of surrender there. You have very little, control, and then laying in the bed with the herniated disc. So clearly I'm trying to learn this lesson throughout my whole life, right? Just over and over and over. And I can say in recent years, when obstacles, or what we would think of as obstacles or hurdles, come up, I do notice a shift in myself, in my perspective. Like, oh, well, what's in this for me? What's in this for us as a family? Even when it's hard, right? Even if there's days I'm just journaling it, like you, feeling very bitter, feeling very upset, maybe on the verge of tears, but it's like, okay, maybe there's something that wants to flow through me in my journal time right now, where I'll be able to see this from a different perspective. So I feel like once it's in our awareness, then we can't miss the opportunities. On the other side of the obstacles.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, I heard you say something that's really important. It's like that being aware, but because that is, I think, and I will say this because I don't know about you, but I've just had a lot of like hard things. And I think it's because I've needed to learn the lesson. Like I needed to pick up on the lesson. When I was going through I got diagnosed with trigeminal neuralgia in 2012. And that period when I was going through that for 4 years, I will say this. I ended up doing keto for 2 years. I was able to get off all my medications. I put it into remission. I have not had medication for it since.
Good for you.
But for 4 years, I'm
Mhm.
saying this because what we're talking about right now, this is relevant. For 4 years, I was a victim in that.
Mhm.
Meaning I kept trying to shift. I kept trying to find reasons for why people had caused this, like why this had happened. And when I came to a place, and I actually had a practitioner, he was a holistic practitioner, asked me, he said, "What were you doing at the time that this happened?" And I've talked about this, I talked about it in my book because I got really mad about it because I was like, really like, okay, I was running a business and I was a homeroom mom to 3
Yeah.
kids, 16, 12, and 8. Okay, I'm carpool mom. That's what I'm doing. I'm type A, doing 100
Yeah.
different things, wearing a million hats, right? And you want to ask me what I did to contribute to this? I went to the dentist. I went to the dentist, and then 5 months later, I've got trigeminal neuralgia. The dentist did it. My point in this is
Mhm.
I did that for that languaging for 4 years. And then when he
Mhm.
asked me that, I got mad. And then I went home and I was like, I started thinking about it. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, what was I doing? Right. I'm getting chills
Mhm.
right now telling you this because that
Mm.
was like the coming to Jesus moment. That was one of them. That was a coming to Jesus moment because I realized in that moment that there's a possibility that I am actually contributing to the things that are going on in my world. I'm no longer the victim of all the circumstance. I can't control everything, but I don't have to sit back and be a victim to everything. I can change the way I'm looking at things, change the way I'm showing up, change the way that I behave, respond, all those things. So that one moment, it's funny because I wrote my book in 2019. So here we
Mhm.
are, years later. But it was that one moment that really was the tipping point for everything that I'm
Mhm.
doing today because it started this whole trajectory of me now talking about what you're talking about. Like,
Yes.
what am I learning from things that are happening? What is the takeaway in this? How did I contribute to this? What
Mhm.
could I have done differently? What could I do differently going forward? Really, this whole
Yes.
overlooking of everything and no longer being just the victim to everything. And so
Yes.
that's how I can go in now when something doesn't necessarily turn out favorably and say, okay, this was a really sucky thing that
Mhm.
happened right here. What's the lesson in this? What do I need to gain from this particular experience?
Yes. And that's why story is so powerful because just to your point, we are telling ourselves stories every single day about everything,
Yeah.
right? We're telling ourselves a story when the road's closed and we're trying to drive somewhere. We're telling ourselves a story,
The road
you
doesn't
know,
want me to get where I'm going
I
today.
can't go where I want to go, right? We're telling ourselves a story. If we have, when we have these businesses, if
Right.
things are going well, we're telling ourselves one story. If they're not
Yep.
going so well, we're telling ourselves another story. And that's why I come back to anyone I work with. It's like, well, let's get into your story. And
Yeah.
so for anyone listening, it's a great time to ask yourself, okay, so where did some of this come from? Where was the first chapter,
Right.
of this story that I'm still telling myself? Because at any given point in time, you can create that plot twist for yourself. You can write the new chapter, right? You can choose to go a different route that day because, oh, yesterday the road was closed. So
Right.
today I'm going to remember. I'm going to be the hero today because I'm going to remember to go the other way that quickly, right? Our energy, our day can shift. And you're right. So it's around the awareness. And then once we're in that awareness, what are we choosing to do with that awareness? Are we using it for good? Are we not using it for good? We're our own worst critics, right? We're walking around with this internal
Yeah.
critic. All of us have it. And so how do you get into right relationship, with that critic? How do you start to write the stories together, co-create together? Because really the critic just wants to get you back on the right path.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just wants to help you get through the rough draft, so to speak. And so we want the critic. It's a guide.
Yeah.
We don't want to banish the critic completely, but when the critic sneaks in, it's just like a movie, right? Or a book. There are people that review the movies and the books. They're the
Right.
critics.
Right. Yep.
But you use that, right? You use it and channel that to get better each day, to choose again, to find the opportunity and the obstacle, like I said before. And so story becomes so powerful. I also like to um, teach people a little bit about the difference between monologue and dialogue.
Yeah.
All right. Because monologue is when we just talk at someone. So we get this. We've all been in that where we're trying to have a conversation. The other person's they're in monologue. They want to give us their monologue and they don't really care about what we have to say. But we also know what it's like to be in dialogue with someone where, like what we're doing, where it's like, I'm listening to you and I'm getting ideas and you're listening to me and you're like, oh, that's bringing this up for me. That's dialogue. That's what we really want to be in. But many times we're in monologue with ourselves internally. The critic is just dot, 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 dot.
Reeling it
And
home. Yep.
right. And we're not getting back into dialogue with ourselves. So it's like, how do you start the conversation, or how can you be in conversation with your inner critic each day to forge a new path, to come up with new ideas, be inspired?
I love that. So we should just really be talking to ourselves and asking ourselves questions. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
You know what? Because I'm doing that all the
All
time.
day.
I'm like, okay, well, this was really bad today, Jennifer. What are you going to do different tomorrow? What are we going to do?
Yes. Well, I tell a lot of my clients, hit record on your phone and talk it out with yourself. Just lay it all out, then go back and listen. Listen to yourself, because there's so much information in the tone of our voice. We know right away when we listen to ourselves back, like, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, no, I'm glad I didn't say that out loud to anyone else, right? Or we get the giggles at ourselves, like, you didn't even put the words together the right way. But I know what you mean, right? Because it's my idea. The other thing, like from a neuroscience standpoint, is that our subconscious mind trusts our own voice the most, because it's the voice it's always known. So there's a lot of power within our own self-leadership to record ourselves and to get into this dialogue where we vent it all out, talk it all out, listen to ourselves back, and then from there start to discern what are the next best steps. Where do I want to go next?
I love it. No, it's good stuff. And I was laughing, kind of chuckling a little bit when you were talking about the monologue and the dialogue, because my husband will probably tell you I'm always monologuing him.
With him.
But I tell him all the time, I'm like, well, if you were interested in what I had to say, you'd be dialoguing with me. You wouldn't be letting me do all the monologuing. I have to
just tell him. Yeah. Tell him. Do you remember when we first met, all the dialogue you engaged in with me?
Yeah. He's a quiet guy.
Now you only enjoy my monologues. You enjoy my monologues. That's what happens every time.
I tell him all the time, I'm like, you'd be bored if I wasn't monologuing you. You wouldn't have anything to talk about at all, because then it'd just be too quiet. Nobody'd be talking at all.
But I tell my husband.
I agree with you on this whole dialogue, because it is so true. The things we say to ourselves are so powerful. And, so much of even like the guy that I was talking to before, we were talking about just attitude, and like, we go into something, and if we think something's going to work, something isn't going to work. And I will tell you, just that conversation when I mentioned the going from the 4 years of being the victim to stepping out. Okay. So 4 years of I was on 6 different medications, including opiates, in pain every single day. Nothing was changing, to 11 months. I'm not promoting, I'm not saying one way or the other, but 11 months of changing the trajectory. I went keto and I got off all my medications in 11 months. So my point to that, yes, I'm sure there was some things in there that made a difference. I got a lot of sugar out of my body and cut inflammation down, but my attitude was also very different too, because my attitude went from being, I'm a victim, I can't control anything, there's nothing I can change, to I'm going to attempt to try to change things. I'm going to at least give it my all and put the energy and the effort into this, and I'm going to get better. I'm going to work to get better. So it really was that shift. And I think that probably started with the dialogue, because I got, to put it bluntly, pissed off at being sick and ill every day and hurting, to we've got to figure out a way to get out of this and get into a place where I can thrive. So health or not, I think that mentality is really the same. If we want to be effective leaders, whatever, we have to decide, right, that we want to be curious and have those dialogues with ourselves and work to change those processes, because otherwise you're just going to, I would have gotten up. I can't imagine here, 13 years later, still going, I have trigeminal neuralgia, and that's my life. I mean, I've been diagnosed with it, but I don't even tell people. I talk about that as something I've went through, but I don't talk about that as something that I even have. And I'm not going to lie. There are times, sometimes it'll flare up, just nothing ever bad where I need medication or to go to the hospital or anything like that. But I will feel the nerve every now and then, a little bit of ting in here when the weather gets cold, air, or, and so I know it's still kind of there, but I don't even tell people. It's not like, hey, Nicole, I have, You won't hear, So I do.
Yes,
I think it's the dialogue and what we tell ourselves and
it is.
how we choose to show up with that.
Yes. Well, and what I hear and what you're saying too, which is I think really important with anything health related, is there was an identity shift for
Yeah.
you. And so it's really easy, especially in our society, to allow whatever diagnosis you have to become part of your identity
Yeah.
or become the main character in your story. And so for a while, that was the main character of your story
Right.
until you were like, I'm fed up with this.
Yeah.
I want this. I want this to go away. You got really empowered, right? You got mad, you got
Yeah.
empowered, and you started to take action. And in doing that, your identity shifted. You were no longer the person that has this. You were the person that's going to conquer it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you became a different character in
Right.
your story. But I feel like particularly with health issues, that becomes more prevalent. My mom had breast cancer last year, and the one thing we've come back to is she did really well with all of her treatment. She's finished everything up now. But every time she and I have talked about it, one thing that always comes up is she never identified with having breast cancer. It was more of a like, oh, this is going on. These are the steps I'm going to take to make it go away, to heal myself.
Yeah.
And so, like,
So,
even as she finished up and you get to go to survivorship clinic where they have
yeah.
like massage and acupuncture and like all these
Woo!
nice services that you
Yeah.
get to
I
go
love
do.
it.
She's like, I just hate that it's called survivorship
Yeah. It
clinic.
should just be,
Can't
yeah.
they call it something else? Because that is how strongly like she has not allowed herself to identify, with that particular diagnosis. And so, I just feel like for her, maybe not for everybody. Everybody's here to learn different things from their experiences. But I will say, when you make that conscious shift to
Yeah.
not allow the diagnosis to become who you are and become everything about you, there's a lot of power,
Yeah.
right? And reclaiming who you were or who you want to be on the other side of the diagnosis.
I like your mom.
Yeah.
I don't even know her and I like her. No, I agree. I think it's important. I think it really, like I said, I can't, I have not gone through what your mom's gone through, but I
Yeah.
will say I could not imagine waking up and being on 6 different medications for the rest of my
Right.
life and being like that. Like, I just couldn't imagine that the quality of life and
Yeah.
and so, I think, yeah, you have to get fed up or decide that you're not going to, and I work with it.
Right.
It's interesting. I have a functional she is a registered nurse here
Hmm.
that is, she does functional medicine. I go see her. She checks my blood every 3 months. We look at everything. She looks at blood markers. She's great because she does a full panel, can look at everything. So really, she knows what to look for. If there's anything out of balance,
Yes.
she knows we need to, investigate. But it's great because I meet so many people that come in there and they
Hmm.
come from all over the country to see this lady. And it's so interesting to hear their stories, like what they're going through, but they all sort of have this same kind of like, I'm fighting, like I'm not identifying. I have this, but I'm
Right.
like working. And I get so, like, I was in there one day with a girl that had like stage 4 cancer, a young girl, like
Oh.
stage
Hmm.
4 that was in there. And she was just so like, good spirited and just, you know what I mean? That fighter mentality. It was just so impressive to me. So I think, yes, that identity shift is important
Hmm.
to all of this. And I think that comes back to the mindset really like, of what do you want to do here? Because you can either, yes, I'm not saying there are some things you're not going to be able to control, but you don't have to sit back and be like, okay, I'm going to go this route and be negative about it. And we all have to learn, I
Exactly.
guess, whatever the takeaway is for us. Because I don't ever like to say I know how somebody feels or what somebody's
Right.
going through in any of these journeys that we're going through, whether it be health
Right.
or the leadership or the pain points of a business. I feel like all these little parallels, they all show up in all these segues of our business and teach or in our lives and teach us things. So, but
Yes.
it's part
Yes.
of our human
Well,
experience.
and I feel like in any surrender process, because that's what we've talked about several times
Yeah.
as we've been chatting, what we still can control in the surrender process is what we choose to think about, how we choose to react to things. There's still choice, there's still things we can control. We're not complete
Right.
victims of our circumstances all the time. So, what does it look like to be the hero? each day? How do you choose yourself instead of the title you've given yourself? How do you actually choose yourself, the real inner you? And I feel like for anyone listening, it could be fun for you to make a list of all the identities that come up for you. It could be like mom, partner, like all of them. Maybe they're old ones that people have put on you, but start to go through that list and ask yourself, which ones do I still really resonate with? And which ones would I be okay to let go of?
Absolutely. It's
And
good.
anchor into a new identity.
Yeah, because if people everybody gets in, we get into autopilot, right? We just assume, and it just stays until I think it's like balancing your checkbook, right? Like if you don't know what's in there, you don't know what's in there. But the minute you sit down and you look, you go, oh, maybe I need to do this a little different, do this a little different. It's the same thing what you're saying here. It's really about just taking stock of how you're identifying yourself. And are you still carrying that? Or are you saying, I don't need that any longer, right?
Yes. Right. And even some of the ones, I always go back to mom. Like you brought up being a mom to your kids at, how the ages they were at the time, and how you were going a million different directions for them, right? You're doing carpools, you're momming. Call it momming. That's the good umbrella term, right? And my daughter's 9. And so I feel like I'm running around a lot.
You're doing the momming. Yes.
Yes, I'm doing the momming. And I would never, just like you, we would never want to give up momming. But even in that identity, how can I choose differently? If I feel too frantic and I feel too rushed, what is it I can do for me? Is it I just get up 20 minutes earlier so I have a little more time on the front end of my morning? Is it that after everyone's gone to bed, I carve out 15 minutes for myself, or I put my phone down and I just be with myself, or I read my book, or I do what we still have choice in that. So we can choose to be the calmer, maybe not as chaotic mom, because there's still going to be chaotic days, but we still have choice in that. So we can reshape some of these identities, into something that's more balanced, more flourishing for us, but also our kids pick up on that. So it's a great way to role model for them, ways to self-regulate.
Yeah. I love that you said be calmer, because I'm like, we're moms, right?
Yeah.
This is my goal every day. It's like my goal all the time. Now my kids are grown, so they're all out. And you're going to love this, because we're sort of like, we were joking yesterday, because we're kind of empty nesters, but not.
Yeah.
Because my youngest, who's 21, is a chef. And so he travels. And so right now he is in Hawaii. He's supposed to be coming back on Wednesday. And we were joking yesterday, because we're like, we get a taste of like empty nester, and then we're not empty nesters anymore. And so like, I asked my husband that day, I'm like, are you excited he's coming back? And my husband's like, yeah, but it's going to be chaotic again, because we just know. Right. And so I'm like, I'm in my prep right now. Like today's Monday. I'm in my prep zone where I'm like, okay, my identity is not freak out mom. We are under control. It is all good.
You're like in identity shape-shifting mode
around
empty nesting.
We
aren't.
So we're always like I'm like, which identity are we losing today? And funny, I run a networking group, and last week we were talking about scripting actually, but we were talking about how we want to come across to our people that we work with. And I was like, come up with words you like grounded, calm, all of these words, right? Like are words that I like to use for myself. Yeah. We're grounded today. We're calm today. We're nice today. We're smiley today. All the words, but we know it's not always perfect. It's definitely a constant.
They all move on like a continuum.
Yes.
Right. So like you have your perfect balance of calm, and then maybe you move to a little heightened, excited calm, right? And then like a little more negative, but internally you may still feel pretty calm as you're evaluating what's exciting, and what's triggering you. But it's okay. We're all going to move through it. But it comes back to the awareness, right? We're just like, okay, now I'm going to come back to center.
I agree.
Take a little breath.
I wanted to ask you really quick on the burnout, because this was a thing for you, and obviously it's a big thing you talk about, and it is a lot. I talk about it too. I talk a lot about, how the nervous system, the signs of that, and also too, just how that affects like emotional intelligence, right? How we show up in the workforce and around the kids. And that's always such a fun topic with people, because they don't connect the dots. They think nervous system, like physical running, exercise, cortisol, those kinds of things, but they never connect the dots that the nervous system is actually related to what everything we've been talking about here,
Yes.
like how we show up and respond and all of that. So I would love just some, input on that from you as far as like what you see or maybe some things people can look for, just from your take.
Yes. So the first thing that's really coming up for me is I feel like this is one of the most valuable things I learned when I did my trauma informed certification and training. And it comes back to this idea of when we're in relationship with other people, because I find, like for myself personally, right, for clients, typically relationship dynamics tend to be one of our bigger triggers that definitely gets us dysregulated. If we could
Right.
all have so much alone time each day, we'd be very regulated. Um,
Right.
but we're humans and we're meant to interact. And so a lot of our trigger points come from outside of us, from other
Yep.
people, and we're just all kind of triggering each other. But the main thing I learned there that I like to bring forward to people is in a relationship, a third of the time you are going to be in rapport, like meaning we get along, we see things eye to eye. You're going to spend a third of the time fighting, right? Not getting along. And then you're going to spend a third of the time, well, I should say fighting, or we can call it rupture.
Rupture's
So
good. I like that. I
can
like
call it rupture. So it might be fighting. Sometimes rupture is passive aggressive. Sometimes
Yeah.
rupture is avoidance, but a lot of us go to, especially like in our home dynamics, right? We might bicker a little bit. We
Right.
think of it more as like a little bit of fighting, but passive aggressive can come in there. But then a third of the time you should be in repair. And that's where society and families really haven't taught us how to
Yeah.
repair. So a lot of times we're in rapport, we're getting
Right.
along. You don't want to be in rapport longer than a third of the time because it means that one of you is never saying
Probably
what you really
agreeing.
think.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't agree on everything,
Right. Right.
and then we're really good at rupturing, right?
Yep.
Society is really good at showing us how to rupture. We see it play out on television and the news, right? There's just rupture,
Mhm.
rupture, rupture. We very rarely see repair. So especially as a parent. And I advocate this with my clients, especially when I'm in organizations. Maybe they've had some ruptures, but they've never really sat down with the team to try to repair that rupture. But particularly with my daughter, I feel like we should be teaching kids this. Whenever we get in a disagreement, and I'm getting to that stage with her where I don't know much, I'm getting to be that mom, she's getting a little feisty and getting to that age. And so we will bicker, right? We will butt heads. She will storm off to her room. I will not be very happy myself. I will have to walk to another room to try and
Right.
cool down.
Yep.
But I always go to her room afterwards, knock on the door, ask her if I can come in, get permission because I know she is upset and may just need time alone. And if she says yes, I say, can we talk about it? If she says yes, then we talk about it. But I always tell her, I love you through all of that. I love you through all the yelling. I understand you got upset. I got upset. I'm just a human too. Moms don't always get it right.
Right.
And we make up.
Yep.
And last year she had a few girl things at school and she came home the one day. She's like, well, I went up and I apologized to her and I tried to fix it, but she told me she didn't know if she wanted to hear that yet. And I said, well, great. I said, she knows how you feel now. I said, she still needs to be where she is, but she knows where you stand. And when the time's right, she'll circle back around. And she did.
Love it.
And I was like, wow, look at that girl drama,
Yeah. I love it.
averted in some way or dealt with in
Yeah.
a
Your daughter
in
did
a
the
better
right thing.
way.
No, I love it. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
But that can go for teams too. Sometimes
Mhm.
you just bring people together and they can give voice to, this is how this made me feel. And it made me feel this way because we were on this one committee together for a while. Now we're not on the same committee. And actually, when I got to the root of it, I realized I just miss doing that kind of work. And I don't feel like I get the opportunity to do it anymore. And so that's why I acted this way. And then we find out, well, that person really enjoys being on the committee. So can we put them back on that? Can we give them some other work that's energizing to them that they love? So even in that simple framework of, rapport, rupture, repair, there's so many ways we can apply that to our
Yeah.
lives and the bigger picture that's taking place around us.
I love this. And we could talk forever on that. I think that's so good because you're so right. I think that's where there's so much passive progression, and so much avoidance, all of the things. I mean, there's so many we could talk about all that. That's a whole
Yes.
another conversation.
Whole nother
We
conversation.
never get to the place where we just say, okay, listen, I'm sorry, or I'm just And so there's
Right.
never the repair, right? Like that never happens. And then the
Right.
wedges go, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we've never
Yes.
been taught like conflict resolution. I do
Right.
that, now that wasn't something that in fact, my mom, I joke about this, how my mom, when I was little, would make me stand in the corner. I'm a Gen X baby. I'd get stuck in standing in the corner because she'd want me to say sorry. And so she'd just eventually get tired of looking at me and say, go to your room, because
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say sorry. I was like, I'm not going to do this. This is weak. I ain't doing this,
Yes.
and I do try to, I'm not, again, we're parents. I do try with my kids too when I'm arguing to say, look, I'm sorry. I know this, you didn't like this, that this happened or whatever. I still love you. This is just, we're having a moment.
Right.
Walk away. I'm okay. I know my son and I, my
Mhm.
youngest, are very much alike. So we will do that. And I have to be like, Sean, I'm done. I'm going in the other room right now.
Yeah,
He's
you have to take the
21.
breather.
I'm going in the other room, but I will a lot of times go back and they'll be like, are you okay? Look, I still love you. I don't agree that, whatever.
Right.
I think these are important skills that people need to learn to come back to. So good on you. And it makes me think of, my oldest daughter is a bilingual school teacher in 4th grade. And
Mhm.
I remember she was telling me a story about how she had some kids that were 2 little girls that they were just doing mean girl stuff. And she made them, I think they wrote a note to each other just
Uh-huh.
to apologize to each other, which I thought was such a good gesture because it was like, hey, we're still friends, and I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. Cause I think that's something we just don't teach people how to do, is
Yes.
just say, we don't have to own it. We don't have to own whatever happened. We can just say, I'm sorry, for my part or whatever I did
Right.
to contribute to that situation.
Right. And you're
You know?
just acknowledging, right? Like we said before, as humans, we just want to be seen and valued. So when we can acknowledge, I'm sorry that that affected you that way.
Yeah.
I still maybe believe what I believe, but I never intended, right, for this
Right.
to escalate, to this point. And when all else fails, I always tell everybody, like, just come back to your breath. It's the simplest way to regulate in the
Yeah.
moment.
Just pause.
You know, come back to your breath. It's like we were born with it. It'll be the last thing we do before we leave this earth. And it is something we do have control over. You can hold your breath. You can exhale when you choose to. It happens automatically, thank goodness, all day, but it can redirect your focus in an instant and it can be very quick. I know some people feel like, oh, I hear about breathing and I have to do it this certain way. And it's like, no, if you take 5 nice inhales and exhales just back to back, you will have already started to lower your blood pressure and your heart rate. You will have already started to come back to center, even in just 5 breaths. So just back to breath would be another just word of advice
Yeah.
around regulation.
I do it too. It's funny.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, when I'd get mad, I'd go in my room and I would just breathe through it. My mother would be like, "You're breathing like a dog." I think I was on to something as a
Try
kid.
to calm down.
I was so bad. I would just be like, like I don't do that anymore. I do much more calm breath. But I'm with you. I'm 100%. Like sometimes when I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, I will do that. I'll just go, splash some cold water on my face just to kind
Yes.
of stimulate my nervous system, just to calm
Right.
down, especially for us that are, driven and moving all the time. You have to really sometimes just be mindful. In part of my
Mhm.
nervous system training, one of the things we talked about was like high energy and low energy people. And for
Mhm.
somebody like me who is a high energy, I have to practice those down times, like coming down and getting grounded. And so meditation, I've studied, like
Mhm.
transcendental meditation, all of those things are great. And I can tell you, I love to, I don't, when I look at these, watches, I don't, they're garments. I don't take everything literally I just look at
Yeah.
trends is what I do.
Mhm.
And what I will tell you is that when I am high strung and going all the time and not taking that downtime, I can look at just like my heart rate variability and I'll
Like
tell you, it'll be like when I'm
Mhm.
taking the time to be grounded, take some pause, it will balance out and stay that way. It's always a
Yeah.
really good indicator. I can look at it and go, okay, we're doing this trend where it's kind of what's going on,
Yes.
like what's happening, like, am I going
Mhm.
pushing hard or, and so I'm with you. I think that the breathing's good and um, lots of different hacks for,
Yes.
but that's an easy,
For bringing
that's
it
one
down
that
a
we can
notch.
do, pretty without money, all the things,
Right. And
very
just come right back to it. You just have to
exactly.
remember to.
Exactly. You can set a note on your,
Yeah.
a little task on your thing.
Breathe.
It'll beep at you. Pause, take a breath.
Yes.
I
5
love
deep
it.
breaths.
Nicole, you
Hey,
are
that's a good hack
awesome.
though.
Yeah, it is. It is. You are awesome. I want to tell you thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on here today and sharing with us. You and I could probably sit on here forever,
I
and I know
know.
you've got things to do.
Yes.
So if our audience is listening and they want to get in touch with you, maybe they want to follow your work, reach out to you, maybe they need help. I don't know. Where would
Yes.
you like us to send them?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just under Dr. Nicole Garritano. If you search for me, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Garritano, and you can DM me on either of those platforms. I check them regularly.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to reach out to you too and connect with you so we can stay in touch and all the good stuff.
Yes,
So
that will be great.
appreciate it. Appreciate all the wisdom and the knowledge nuggets and all the good stuff. Hopefully somebody listening to this, gets something out of this that they can use and put in. If not, take a breath. We know that for sure.
That's right.
Lots of great things.
Just breathe. Just breathe. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed this conversation.
So fun. All right. And of course, to our audience, we appreciate you, love you. Hope that you found this episode both informative and inspiring. And of course, if you did, you know what to do. All the things like, share, subscribe, comment, so we can keep sharing all this fabulous content with you. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.